Thank you, Julio.
Thank you, Leo. Egunon, buenos días, good morning. The plan was to do my presentation in Spanish, but I will use English in order to make the panel work nicely. So I will speak slowly. I can go for hours if I present in Spanish, but in English I'm going to be brief. So the title is not brief. The title was given to me was not brief, and I would like to explain how we think in Madrid and how we think from the Smart Health Center, which is a newly started program for the regional healthcare system in Madrid. When designing something, we always jump on the problem and try to solve it, but from our perspective, the most difficult part is understanding, defining the problem and the unmet needs. Most of the time, we spend little time with about little time to understanding, and we start doing things like crazy. And then we come up with a solution that solves no problem, because the problem was not there. So, first of all, I would like to discuss with you what the problem is in healthcare. From our perspective, the problem is the business model. For centuries, we have provided services. How many services? As many as possible, because we were paid to provide services. It is described in the Talmud. A person gives money to the physician, maybe he will be healed, maybe he will not be healed. And it's the 21st century, and it's all about the same. So for us, if we want to transform the system, we need to start three different lines of innovation. The first one is business model innovation. The second one, human-centric innovation. What a person builds, she or he will never stop using, because we love the things we build. And thirdly, data-driven innovation. After all, healthcare systems, care systems are data processing systems. That is what we do. Maybe we don't recognize it, we don't acknowledge it, we don't understand it, but care is about processing data and making decisions. So how we see the new business model. You know this guy, he is Sir Muir Gray. We follow him. He's a wonderful person, and he has this definition of value in healthcare, which is different from Michael Porter's definition. Michael Porter's definition is about efficiency. Muir Gray goes a little bit further. Value is more benefit with less harm, times perceived quality, not perceived quality, the patient about how the system works, which is fine, about their own health, about how they feel after going through the system. Are we better off or not after getting all these things done? And divided by cost, but not only money. For humans, time is more important than money. And we never reckon that. We stay 2-3 days in the hospital and we say, fine, it's great because you have no complication. You stayed only for 2 nights. Yeah, but it took me 6 years to fix the problem. And we never pay attention to that. We're very satisfied because the patient was delivered after 2 days after major surgery. And then the carbon footprint. The amount of energy we consume to get a good outcome. We really don't care. We don't measure it. So this is the new business model for us. And then we have to think differently. We have to be human-centric and at the same time data-driven. Combining both is sometimes difficult. So we went back to Deming. He's always very useful when one tries to organize thoughts. And first of all, for us, we need to define outcomes and value definition by payers and policymakers, by healthcare professionals, and of course, by patients. If we don't know the fate, if we don't know the outcome, if we don't define it, how will we know that we have reached the destiny, the end of what we were looking for? So oftentimes, we don't know what we are looking for in terms of outcomes and value. So first, we have to define it. And then we build healthcare processes or care processes, taking into account the full cycle of care, using technology designed to solve the problem and to meet the need, taking security and safety by design, not waiting for problems to emerge. And of course, patients must be there from the very beginning. Then we implement. We also take into account technology, patients and professionals, assess the outcome, and that should help us to drive cultural change. Innovation is about departing from one way of thinking and adopting a new one. If we don't do that, there's no way to transform the system. And then we start all over again. In us, William Deming said, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. If we show me the data, that's the most important thing for us. So we have an internal algorithm. We have DNA. When Watson and Crick, we can discuss about their finding and who is the author of this. And I'm sure that they just took credit and stole it from a woman. But they were describing that we are just information, coded information. And we have data for that now, but we have more data. This is Glasgow, by the way. Because our algorithm, our internal algorithm, crosstalks with many external algorithms. And the problem is that our information systems were not designed to understand dialogue. So it's very difficult to adapt because at the same time, our genome is not fixed. It's not, it evolves and modifies, and gene expression is modified by the context, but we don't understand that yet. We just gather data, more data, but we haven't defined the problem that we are trying to solve. So we think that in order to take advantage of the data we accumulate, we need to build data lakes with structured and unstructured data that will be used later for analytics. And business intelligence is fine, but business intelligence explains the past. But that's what healthcare professionals usually look for. They feel comfortable with that. But the next step will be data mining and process mining to explain the present, to provide decision-making support to healthcare professionals and to care professionals in general. And then we'll go on with predictive and prescriptive algorithms. And that's machine learning and deep learning. But it's very difficult for us to go to artificial intelligence without designing the infrastructures needed in order to do that. So we talk about data, but sometimes in our integrated or even in our siloed care systems, we don't design, or we don't build the foundations in order to deliver in the future. So this is what we define as the architecture in order to generate evidence-based big data sets, data lakes, trying to make sense of the differences between guidelines and practice guided by guidelines. You know that most of us don't follow guidelines. We usually follow mind lines because most of our patients don't really fit in that guideline. Our patients are completely different. This is the average patient, and my patient is not the average patient. It's a person, it's this person, it's not the mean. And at the same time, we have current practice. And maybe it's not so different, or yes, we don't know how we make sense out of this divergent situation. So whenever we design technology, we try to abide by this architecture. At the same time, if we want to design new technologies, we need to understand how patients navigate the system. And for example, process mining is very useful because we say that patients go this way, but it's not true. And the data is there. The problem is that most of times, we don't analyze it. There are tools. We can understand how breast cancer patients go through the system, and it's not in an orderly manner. Oftentimes, they go from one place to another, waiting for months, just to make a decision that should have been made weeks before. So we have the technology. The problem is not the technology. The problem is how we think. The problem is that we have mind maps that are very difficult to change because we think that what we think is true. And that's a big mistake. So just to end my presentation, if you try to design new technologies to solve problems and to meet the needs of patients and citizens, ask these 3 questions made by Martha Gray, a professor of biomedical engineering at MIT. Who will be better off? How will they be better off? And most importantly, how will you know? Thank you very much. Thank you.